Our goal in a sales call is simply to find the pain, the X marks the spot, as I like to call it, which the pain in this case, if we're pretending this was a prospect I was on the phone with, is, okay, I don't have consistent lead flow. I did 50K last month. We usually do 200K a month. I know where the pain is. I know where the X marks the spot is. My goal is to now dig deeper on that pain and get really clear on what the root cause issue is and what that's been costing them and how much it's actually going to cost them in the long run if they don't do anything about it. And that is what we call doubt questions to actually make them want to act now, okay? So then we double down on, like, are we talking gross or net? And then if they mention any expensive overhead, for us, they're the machines, we go, okay, and the device you mentioned, is that all paid off or are you financing that each month? And if they're financing it, so if you don't mind me asking, John, are you making more with that machine than it's costing you right now? And again, this is going to be industry specific, but if there's any overhead that they have, for example, with roofers, the team they pay, the marketing they run, the in-person location they have, whatever that looks like, double down on that and see if they're spending more than they actually make, because that's a big pain point, right? And then we can double down on, like, the cost of inaction, which means, okay, so if you stay in the same place and you're losing money right now, what does your runway look like? How long do you actually have until you run out of funds, right? Then we're going to dive into past solutions. We want to get crystal clear on what they've tried in the past or what they've considered in the past, because if we try and sell them on the same thing they've already been pitched last week or they've already tried, the likelihood of them closing is going to be 0 to none because they've already heard it, right? Our goal is to fit ourselves in a completely different box to what they're typically used to, because if they fit us in the same box as every other agency that they've been on the phone with, the likelihood of them buying from us is going to be 0 to none again. Because what you're going to have whenever you get on a sales call with a lead is you want to avoid being put in what I call the box, okay? Now the box is, like, let's say A stands for agency, right? We've got like 10 different agencies in this box, all of them, all trying to pitch them with the same shit guarantees, the same offers. And what we want to do is create our own box that they cannot associate with this box. And the reason we want to do that is because if we're the only people in this box, meaning all of this shit sounds terrible compared to our solution, the prospect is going to go with us. And what this sounds like in, like, quote terms, which is actually from Cole Gordon, and I really like this quote, is your solution needs to be the simultaneous reason why everything else they've tried in the past has failed and why your solution is different. So if everybody else doesn't offer a call center and you offer a call center, that would be a prime example of putting yourself in your own unique box. If you get on a sales call and they tell you, oh, everybody else is running Facebook ads, and you go ahead and pitch them TikTok ads, that's another way of putting yourself in a unique box. This is why you're going to be selling the same thing to every prospect for the most part, right? A lot of the time for the people in this, it's going to be Facebook ads, some sort of nurture. You're going to be booking their appointments. You're going to be helping them with the reporting. But the way you sell it is going to be completely different. And it's going to be completely dependent on the information they give you in the background phase, where they give you information about what they've tried in the past to solve this, the solution questions. Okay, now from that point, another thing that we do in the sales call is we make them realize where their past solutions sucked. So the reason that we do this is because what we can't do is we can't go to somebody and go, oh, well, John, the reason why your past ads didn't work is because of this reason. They wasn't calling the leads. Their ads were shit. Because if we do that, it's going to go through one ear and out the other. People don't trust salespeople, okay? And naturally, it's going to sound scummy from you anyway if you tell them, oh, all of the stuff you're doing right now is wrong. Come and buy our thing that's completely different, which is common sense, right? Why would they trust you to do that? So what we need to do is make them come to that conclusion themselves without directly telling them, hey, that solution sucks. And the way that we do this is through assumptive questioning, okay? So an example of that would be, let's say the previous agency that they were working with were running their ads, but you don't really have too much information about what they did, okay? You can ask an assume question to uncover the biggest problem and why it didn't actually work. And the reason we use assume questions is because assume questions make it sound like it's the normal or it's the standard, when in reality it's actually not. It's actually your biggest selling point against everybody else in the market, which you should already know if you went through the advanced market research video. So an example of this would be, okay, got it, man. So you were working with an agency, they were generating your leads. And you mentioned that your biggest problem was quality, right? Okay, got you. So I assume this agency was calling your leads, booking them in. So what qualifying questions were they asking before booking them on your calendar? Was it credit score, commitment level? Did they get the project value that they were willing to commit to? Then what's going to happen is you're going to pause, and 9 times out of 10, the lead is going to go, oh, no, they didn't even call our leads at all. But see, we didn't even stop at calling the leads. We stopped at like a super granular piece of information that they should have been collecting with their call center, which would have got them better results. If you can master assumptive questioning to make them realize their problem is actually a problem without you directly telling them it, you have the key to persuasion. Okay? Because persuasion is getting somebody to do what you want them to do without actually pushing them and forcing them to do it, right? And that is essentially what we're trying to do on the sales call. Again, the sales call is not a fight. It's not us going, John, your ads were shit. Your agency should have been calling the leads. It's a dance. It's like, okay, got it. So when they were calling the leads, I guess, What type of household income were they targeting on the ads? Was it 6 figures a year and above? Or, they wasn't doing that at all. Interesting. Okay. So how did you know they were qualified? So you see here how we still create this big gap of like, oh shit, why didn't we think about that? Why didn't we do that? Okay. And then as well, if that prospect doesn't know their numbers and we're asking for things like what's your cost per lead, what's your show rate, what's your schedule rate, if they already work with an agency, a question that we can ask is like, so I assume they were giving you like a weekly report breaking down ROI, cost per lead, show rate. So why don't we just pull that up and see what it looked like for last month? And then they'll probably go, oh, they didn't do it. And you want to spend a lot of time here. And two things you want to get before moving on from the past solutions phase is what they've tried and why it didn't work, and what they've been pitched and why they didn't move forward, okay? We don't just want to know what they've tried in the past, we also want to know what they've been pitched in the past, because if we know both of those things, we can then position our solution as different, okay? And we want to continue circling back through this process until we exhaust all past solutions and we know exactly what they've tried in the past and how we can position ourselves as different, okay? And what we will tend to do is if we're on the phone with a sophisticated buyer, and they've worked with an agency in the past, we'll go really granular on their numbers. Ad spend, leads, how many clients did you get? How many did you convert and actually close on a project, as an example? What was the price point? What was your ROI? Because when we understand these numbers, if you've been running your agency for a while, you can actually just compare them to your numbers. And if your numbers look better than their numbers, then it's a win-win situation, right? Then what we do is we dive into the qualitative pain business and the personal pain. Okay. Now, again, we're spending a lot of time in pain here. We've covered background. We've covered solutions. We've covered financial and resource. We're going to be getting into cost soon and desire. We're now we've been into like the quantitative, which is like the numbers that drive their success and why they didn't work out. Now we're going into the qualitative. We're getting a little bit more emotional. Now, with these questions, you've got to be careful with them. If you're on the phone with a business, I would be very careful with the way that you navigate these questions. A lot of the time, we might even skip these questions because a lot of the time, if you're on the phone with a prospect that has a greed and not a need, then asking like, oh, how is that affecting you personally, John, isn't really going to move the needle forward. And if anything, it's probably going to push you further away from the sale, right? My typical rule of thumb is if it's a need, I'll go more emotion-based because every sale is emotional, whether we like it or not. But with greed prospects, it is definitely more logical. It's more numbers driven. With logical based buyers, it's more like if we change this one number, then we can help you make an additional Y. With need based people that need to do this, we can go a little bit more emotional. Okay. Now, then we go into overcoming the doubt question. Now, basically what the doubt question is, we want to make sure that they don't think that they can actually do this themselves. Okay. So the way that we ask this is we go like, so I can understand, man, what's been stopping you from figuring this out on your own? Like, why not? I don't know, just do the marketing yourself, take things in-house and, just scale it up that way. And the goal here was to get them to verbalize and admit it would not be an efficient use of their resources to figure it out on their own, and it would be more efficient to pay somebody to figure it out for them. And then we go into the desire. If they're numbers driven and sophisticated, meaning they have a greed, what we typically do is we ask, so just so I can stay organized on my end, say we look 3, 6, 12 months ahead, what's the ultimate revenue goal you guys want to hit? Just so I can reverse engineer the numbers on my end and see if we can even help you hit it, If they're not sophisticated, meaning they have a need, we can go, so say we can help you solve, the problem that you're having with not getting consistent lead flow. Like, what's the goal then? I mean, what's stopping you from, hitting 5K a month profit, removing yourself from the equation, moving to Thailand and sipping cocktails all day? So the goal here is to find out, if we just scroll back up, what the heaven island is. We've got clear on hell. We've got clear on what they've tried in the past, what they're considering, and now we're going into the heaven island and getting clear on what that looks like too. Then what we do is we go into the cost of inaction, which again, if the prospect is losing money or breaking even, which is typically a need, this is where we're going to get a personal cost of inaction. Now, this is a type of cost question where we insert a pain point or reference point to what they said earlier on in the call, and we put it into a templated cost question framework above. So for example, earlier you said that you're barely breaking even factoring in all of your overhead and the machines that you financed. If you don't mind me asking, how much is coming out per month? And what we're basically asking is, how much runway do you have until you run out of money? Because if somebody has a need to do this, chances are they're either breaking even or losing money. So it's either going to be like, how much more time do you want to waste on this thing that's not making you any money? Or that you could probably make more with a full-time job, right? Why not just get a job that's doing something like this that you like? Or we go into the runway side of things, savings. Now, when it comes to greedy prospects, they don't need to grow, but they have agreed to grow. This is where we go into more of a logistical-based cost question. Now, this type of cost question is purely for sophisticated buyers. The use for this type of cost question is because sophisticated business owners doing multi 5, 6 figures a month are not in a state of pain where you will get them emotional. Because if they don't buy, they're still making 5 to 6 figures a month. However, if people don't have a need, they have a greed. And this is what we focus on with this kind of buyer type. And the way that we're framing this is, first off, we start with the status thing and we ask to share some thoughts. Got it, man. So based on everything we've spoke about, do you mind if I share some thoughts? And then we build what we call expert authority. So just to give you some context on where these thoughts are coming from, it's because we've had X, Y, and Z insert social proof. Now, I don't say this to weirdly flex. I say this because, it allows us to collect one thing more than anybody else, which is data. Data that allows us to know exactly where your KPI should be and what's going wrong. And then we dive into, okay, looking at your numbers, here's the one constraint that if we fixed it, whether that be cost per lead, the front desk not calling within 5 minutes, reporting, sales training, if we just change this one metric from X to Y, you would make an additional Z per month, okay?